So, one of the things people have been talking about when it comes to AEW from this past weekend is not the fact that they went head to head with Battleground, WWE NXT's Battleground, which, according to a lot of people, not only outsold venue wise and attendance wise Double or Nothing, but more than likely probably had the better showing. Not saying Double or Nothing wasn't, without its, positive moments and, matches and everything, if you will, because we can all agree that if there's one thing AEW does, it's they basically put on good wrestling. And that's always been their primary focus, even if it becomes a hindrance for them in the long run. But, as you can probably see on the screen, two things got people talking about, Double or Nothing, but not in the best of ways. Especially as it pertains to the upcoming All In Texas show at Global Life Field in Arlington, Texas. And that is the fact that, for the Owen Hart tournament, both the men and the women, you had Hangman Adam Page win for the men in the main event to close out the show, beating Will Ospreay. And then you had Mercedes Moné, aka Sasha Banks, basically beat Jamie Hayter to win the women's Owen Hart Cup and belt, and thus she will go on to challenge for the women's world title at All In Texas. Just like Hangman Adam Page, as I mentioned, will go on to, I mention it or not, go on to face Jon Moxley for the world title at All In Texas as well. And a lot of people feel like this is just too soon in many factors, if you will. And the reason they feel like it's too soon, primarily, is basically with Hangman, you can always go back to him being the world champion, right? To many folks that talk about wrestling, like, JD and Solomonster, who I'm sure are going to touch upon this tonight on Tuesday Night Titans, as well as just Alex Hicks, if you will, and A and B convos and so on. I'm sure a lot of them, will say that basically Hangman winning, even though they're not, upset with the decision, basically they feel like it should have gone to Will Ospreay, because Will Ospreay has made it his goal, his intention, to become world champion in AEW, and right now, according to what they're talking about, he is the more over of the two athletes. So it should have gone to him. But what's interesting, though, is what came out about that situation as well. Because what came out about that situation is that both Hangman and Ospreay were vying backstage for the other to win. Like Hangman was vying for Will to win, and Will was vying for Hangman to win. And I'm sure when you read about that, and Fightful Select and others have that report up, I'm sure when you read about that, you're like, then what's the point of putting those two in the finals against each other if you're going to have them argue, or not argue, but both, vouch for the other to win? What's the point? Why not just choose somebody that you don't have to vouch for and it's the perfect choice? And this, again, is one of those detriments to AEW. It's like, if you're the person creatively in charge, if you have the final say, then you should just, flat out tell them, basically Hangman's going over or Ospreay's going over, end of story. I don't care if you're going to vouch for the other, that's our decision and we're going to stick to it. But, this is what, hinders AEW behind the scenes. Now, I'm not saying Hangman against Jon Moxley won't be a good match. They've proven to have some good, if not violent, matches in the past. But a lot of folks look at it as, been there, done that, why do it again? And as crazy as this sounds, I think the reason Tony's doing it, if there is some kind of method to his madness, if you will, the reason he's doing it is from a storyline perspective and, a real world perspective. You have the Hangman, you have the cowboy, if you will, who's not exactly from Texas, but could potentially, be like he's from Texas or something. You have him basically challenging for the championship in what is known as a very country western, cowboy-like environment and state. And so, by having him in the main event, someone like Tony Khan feels like that makes more sense. It will relate to those that live in Texas, country western, cowboy shit, excuse my language, God, cowboy shit and everything. To someone like Tony Khan, it makes all the sense in the world. And look, it would make sense if it was in his hometown, in his home state, if you will. If it's at a venue, stadium, arena in his home state, which again, I don't think is Texas, correct me if I'm wrong. But it would make more sense if it was done that way instead of this way. But now the question is, where does that leave Will Ospreay? Where does that leave him? Well, a lot of people would assume where that leaves him is potentially a match with Okada, maybe, or going back and feuding with the Don Callis family. But we'll have to see. Because obviously if there's one match they are going to be doing, it's going to be, Okada and Omega at All In Texas. And it's because of this main event between Hangman and Moxley that a lot of people are like, hell, you should just give the main event, the last match of the show, to Okada and Omega instead of Moxley and Page, because no one's going to be able to surpass what they might be, able to do in this match, this rematch that's like 7-something years in the making. So, one can understand their, the confusion. Like it's not like a negative confusion, but it's more of a confusion of like, hey, we get why you did it. We could see maybe environmentally why you're doing it, but still it don't make sense. But then when you look on the other picture that's up here, Mercedes and Tony, this is where, basically people would prefer, if you were to give them a choice between both matchups that they're looking forward to, a lot of fans would tell you they're looking forward to as much as no sense as it makes, as much as no sense that it makes, in their eyes. People would say that they would prefer looking forward to the Hangman Adam Page Jon Moxley match over the Mercedes Mone Timeless Tony Storm match. And why? Because even though people feel like this is being set up for Tony Storm to do what no one else has done, and that's beat the unbeatable, in Mercedes Mone, as much as people want to look at it as being that reasoning, if you will, trying to find what word to say, a lot of people also feel opposite of it. They feel like basically what this is being set up to do is give Mercedes the world title. Now, here's the thing, though. Mercedes being the world champion, look, no one has a problem with, but the issue they do have is her being the world champion and the TBS champion. She has to give up one title, and that would be the TBS title. Thus, they wouldn't have a problem with her holding the world title, because if she holds both, it basically cements what a lot of people, like a JD, like an Alex, like a Solomonster, like an AB and Convos, Greg Morgan, and all of them, have been saying, and that is basically you have sacrificed, your entire women's division in its, 6-year history. You've sacrificed all the goodwill that these women, that have been part of this roster from day one to currently, with all the different changes, all the women coming and going. You've sacrificed all of that, just for one woman who potentially is not going to be there with the company that much longer, depending on her contract status, and is eventually, and probably sooner than later, bound to go back to WWE. You are sacrificing your entire division just for that one woman, if you're going to allow her to walk around not just as your TBS champion, but as your world champion. And for what reason? For what reason, people might ask? Well, I think, honestly, it's Tony Khan's way, and probably Mercedes more so than anything, it's their way of sending a message to Paul Levesque, Triple H. Mercedes knows she's going to go back, And she might be, like I say, using her creative control to send a message to Triple H that, hey, when I come back, you see how I was booked here in AEW? You see how I was booked over in Rev Pro and Creams of Wrestling and New Japan Strong? Guess what? When I come back, that's how you book me. You book me in the exact same way. And if that's what this is about, then fine. Then fine. Let her have her cake and eat it too. Thus, she can send that message loud and clear. But again, what worries folks is she's going to not, it's basically instead of giving up and vacating that TBS title for somebody else to get it, somebody that needs it to, that's up and coming, instead she's going to keep it all. And that's what worries them. That's what worries them, that they're going to sacrifice the last remaining golden piece of their division, the standard bearer, if you will, in Toni Storm. They're going to sacrifice her along with everybody else. She, in their eyes, is going to be the latest victim that's going to be fed to Mercedes Mone. And by being fed to Mercedes Mone, it's basically going to, pretty much render the women's division useless. And they don't want that. They want the women's division to thrive because it's one of the better women's divisions out there. And this is what worries them. Because again, even though there are some that feel Tony Khan won't do that and he'll do the right thing and put Tony over and everything, people feel more so than those that look at it that way. Other people, a majority of people, feel he's going to go the opposite, and they don't want that. They don't want that at all. And again, honestly, you can't blame them for feeling that way if that's the reason for this matchup. To basically give her the women's title and not have her vacate the TBS title, and she just walks around as 5 belts Mone again, or 6 belts Mone, and thus it's her visual message being sent to Paul Levesque and WWE of, hey, when I come back, this is how you book me. So what they need to do basically is they need to take a page out of the New Japan Strong playbook. What they need to do is Mercedes needs to lose. Yeah, have her be pinned and everything, but not in a way that makes her look weak. Basically, what they need to do is they need to have the entire women's division, this is just my suggestion, have the entire women's division show up at ringside and basically distract Mercedes enough, have somebody distract Mercedes enough to where basically Tony takes advantage, rolls her up, and retains. And what would be the best way to really spin Mercedes off from the world title for future reference after that match, if they do it, is when you have all the women show up to basically, see this match, as well as maybe hope and pray that Mercedes doesn't walk out with the world title. You have one of those women that show up be Megan Bayne. And then what you do with Megan Bayne, because people are wondering, okay, where is she? Why is she regulated to a pre-show? Why is she regulated to Collision? Ring of Honor. You know what you do? You have Megan Bayne basically get pushed. Like you have Mercedes go to the outside with Toni Storm, and basically you have Mercedes, I guess unbeknownst, just shove, some of the women out of her way, and one of the women she pushes is Megan Bayne. And, the way they portray Megan Bayne, this won't sit well with her. Thus, you have Megan Bayne get up on the apron, distract Mercedes. This allows Tony to roll her up, win, and Tony retains. Mercedes still is the TBS champion, but basically she's not pinned, in a way that makes her look weak or look like a jobber. She's pinned in a way that she still looks strong because she was pinned off a distraction. And then what you do is you have Megan Bayne get in the ring. Mercedes is trying to confront her, and as she tries to go for like a sneak attack, you have Megan Bayne grab her and hit her with her version of the F5. And then you have Penelope Ford grab the TBS title and hand it to her. And then you have Megan Bayne hold it up. And you know what you do in that instant? You turn two women heels into 2 major baby faces. Well, I wouldn't say major baby faces, but when it comes to Mercedes, you basically get the fans to get behind them. That's what you do. And to me, that would be the best direction to go. That way, in a sense, even in defeat, she still looks strong, but you spin her off into a new feud with the Megasis, as she's calling herself. This goddess-like figure she's being presented as in Megan Bayne. And to me, that would work. Because that way, you have Megan Bayne go into this feud with Mercedes, and then if you do it right, you have Megan Bayne go over Mercedes, and then you do the storyline in AEW and outside of AEW, where she's now on a losing streak. She ends up losing all her belts, and just like Jamie Hayter said she would. And then you have Mercedes come out on AEW television, admit that she did admit by tearing the curtain down a bit that she did have a clause in her contract to where she knew no woman would like it, but they had no choice, that she would have great matches with them, but in the end she goes over. She goes over. Or at least you have her acknowledge that to an extent. But you use all of this to build her to getting that one last opportunity, the world title, and then what you do to really put some reality to it is you have her put her legit AEW contract on the line, to where if she does not win, then she is gone from AEW legitimately for good. That's what you do. So to me, no one has a problem with Mercedes being the world champion, but what they want is for her, if that happens, she has to vacate the TBS title, because she can't be defending twice in one night. That's going to come back to bite her. So if you're going to make her the world champ, she's got to vacate the TBS title. End of story. But if what other people are hoping occurs, and you're planning to have Toni Storm go over, then what you do is you have it done in a way to where Mercedes still looks strong even in defeat, but you spin her off into a feud with whoever causes her to be distracted and thus lead to her, defeat at the hands of Toni Storm by, via roll-up or something. That's what you do. And then, like I said, you spin, Mercedes off into a feud with someone like Megan Bayne or whoever, Chris Statlander, Willow, you name it. And then Toni Storm, you could spin off into a future rivalry and feud with people like Jamie Hayter, and who else? Jamie Hayter, maybe a returning Mariah May, if she comes back, and so on. So to me, that's probably the best thing to do. Because again, the reason folks are upset, the reason they're worried, is not because they don't think the match will be great. It'll probably be one of the better women's matches of the year. What they're worried about is Tony Khan wanting to please Mercedes Mone so much that he'd be willing to give her the win because she has that creative control. But here's the thing. Toni Storm probably has creative control right now as well because of her, her portrayal as timeless. So it's going to be interesting to see who Tony Khan goes with between the two. And probably the other best way to do it is maybe just have a double down. Like they both pin each other and it's a draw. And then you set it up for a future rematch in the future. That might be one way to go too, to basically get out of a situation to where you don't want to upset one side over the other and vice versa. But that's just my thoughts on it. That's just my thoughts on what I think they can do with this matchup in the end. Is it a little too soon? I wouldn't say it is, but basically booking it, as champion versus champion, and you have your two most over champions, as babyface and heel going at each other, it does make things a little confusing and complicated as to exactly what direction you want to go in. So to me, the best option, in my opinion, is either you have Mercedes win and she vacates the TBS title, or you have Toni win, but it keeps Mercedes strong because she gets rolled up by a distraction by one of the women that come to ringside to witness this. Maybe it being Megan Bayne, because I think that would be beneficial. And then you set up Megan Bayne and Mercedes for a future title match. And then you set Toni Storm off to face off against the likes of Jamie Hayter, Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander, you name it. So, to me, you can do it that way. Or the third option as well is you can have a draw. You can have a double down, like a double pin. to where it's a draw, no one wins, and you set up for a future rematch, maybe at Full Gear or something. But that's just my thoughts. That's just my thoughts on the whole situation, guys. Let me know what yours are overall, where you think they should go with this matchup. And do you think, as far as Hangman Adam Page and Jon Moxley go, do you think it's a little too soon? And do you think maybe Tony Khan's only putting Hangman into this match because of where they're at and everything, knowing that that's not legitimately, as far as I know, not legitimately where Hangman lives, is from legitimately. Let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell for notifications. Also, guys, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube, as well as the Teespring store. It helps me out tremendously, guys. But let me know what your thoughts are overall on what I've had to say here. What do you think will happen in the future as we approach All In? What direction do you think they'll go? With Mercedes and Tony, do you think they'll go one of the three ways I've mentioned? And do you think Adam Page is just being put in this matchup because they're in Texas, even though he's not from Texas? Let me know what your thoughts are, guys. And until then, I am out. Take care. God bless.